Alright, party people. Welcome back to the pod. The Four Agreements. Alright. Get this mic clipped on. I'm outside on this beautiful Friday. Alright. So, from page 53 at the break, and I read through most of page 56 until the break right before the end on that page. So, guys, we're in for a treat. So I'm glad that I stopped at the break last time. And let's talk about this next section. So, we've been talking about the second agreement, which is not taking things personally. They talked about not taking things personally that people say, not taking things personally that people do. It starts getting real esoteric here, guys. Now I'm usually down for like deep, vulnerable conversations about things. I guess the difficulty is that lately I've been a little scattered, a little bit all over the place. My schedule's shifting here and there. I'm kind of making, I have a bit of a routine, but it's like I've been really feeling like I need to break that routine, and then it's really throwing me off with like the pod episodes and the recordings, and it's just kind of throwing me off. I'm trying to kind of settle into something, and so yeah, like I noticed too that I don't really like, my mind isn't really going into a lot of deep spaces because I haven't been like, maybe I'm not refreshed, or I'm just like, it's hard for my mind to kind of like settle and like delve into those things when it's so busy delving into all kinds of other stuff for my day. So this segment kind of hit me, a little bit, just because I've been just kind of doing like a whole like matter of fact, like, okay, this is my day, this is what I do, this is what I've been doing, this is what I did, this is what I think about it. But I haven't really been taking any like deeper level looks at things too much, like outside of this book. Like I've been doing a little bit, but I feel like it's not like, I don't know, like maybe I'm wrong in that. Maybe I have had some pretty good insights into things. I just feel like I've been rushed. Like I do record a lot when I'm kind of driving around and stuff, and so I haven't gone to the beach and recorded in a while, so maybe I'll do that tomorrow and during the weekend. But tomorrow's Saturday, and yeah, so I'll probably do that Saturday and Sunday. Yeah, because the beach started charging parking, and sometimes it's a little hot now. We still got June gloom, so, and the sun did kind of come out today, but otherwise it's been pretty gloomy weather, pretty gray out. So, with that, so let's jump into this. So this section on 53 starts talking about, don't take anything personally. Even if they say good things about you, not taking it personally, because, people base what they're going to say about you kind of based on their feelings sometimes. Their feelings about you, their current feelings of the state of mind they're in at that point. And okay, so I'm going to jump into each of these paragraphs with maybe like examples, but after I go through the general parts of them. So, all right, so Yeah. So actions, words, we already know. We're not taking those personally. And then it goes into this super esoteric topic of, the opinions you have about yourself might not necessarily be true. And not taking the things that your mind has to say personally either. Now, this is where I started getting a little confused. These are some ideas I haven't really heard of in this way before. So it says the mind has the ability to talk to itself, but it also has the ability to hear information that is available from other realms. And basically it says the Toltecs called these beings allies, and in Europe, Africa, India, they called them the gods. And then it says, this is all on page 54, our mind also exists in the level of the gods. So remember earlier how they talked about these realities, the dream. So yeah. And it says our mind also lives in that reality and can perceive that reality. And then on page 55, it talks about the mind talking to itself, similar to how you have a left hand or right hand. You can shake your left and right hand together. Like you can shake hands with yourself basically and know what you're doing. Like your hands are both aware of one another. And then they say, the mitote. It's called the mitote. They mentioned this earlier in the book. The mitote is basically like tons and tons of people talking all at once, kind of like a busy marketplace. Okay, and then page 56, it says some part of the mind has objections to certain thoughts and actions, and another part supports the actions of the opposing thoughts. So going back through these different ideas, it's like this section for me was kind of hard to tease out like one main point, because it seems like it has many points that I haven't really thought about it in that way or heard about it in that way. Now, coming from the psychology background, I would say one thing that I can say that is often spoken about, one thing that I can say is yes, it's often spoken about, and in psychology, there's a lot of talk about self-talk, positive self-talk, negative self-talk. Usually people struggle, and want to talk to a therapist more so along the lines of negative self-talk, right? Because it's like that's the self-talk that's usually more distressing. Or maybe they don't even want to talk about that. They might want to talk about their anxiety or their depression, but then the therapist might realize that the self-talk of that person is negative. And the self-talk is pretty much that internal running voice that just goes on and on and on. And that's where, I was pretty much taught. I don't know if I learned it in a book or learned it just through my own practicing, or maybe a combination of things. Learning about breath work, and when I was practicing breath work, like, I do it pretty routine. I wouldn't say routinely. I do it pretty regularly, but I don't always have a routine. Like, I'd say the closest I get to having a routine is like sundown or nightfall around 8 p.m. this time of year. So just to kind of end the day out and have a time of reflection. But that's not always the case. That's not always how that's not always how I do things. So yeah, when it talks about when it talks about, the talking, that kind of mind talking, that's kind of what comes to my mind first, is the concept of self-talk. So not taking anything personally outwardly that someone does or says, good or bad, is that's an interesting concept, because I don't know if I've ever heard anybody talking about like the good aspect as well. Kind of same with the self-talk. Like, most times people don't really spend too much time talking about the positive self-talk, or usually they want to talk about the negative. Usually they want to talk about things that they consider distressing, like negative self-talk, or taking things personally that other people did or said to them that are negative, not so much taking things personally. Like, I've never heard anybody like, man, they compliment me. Like, if it's like in a creepy way, somebody complimenting you and making you like uncomfortable or like embarrassed, that's kind of like different. But I mean, if somebody is just like always complimenting you, always nice to you, always polite to you, usually, I don't know about you, but usually for me, I will not complain about that. I would not be like, oh, this person is so gentle and kind and compassionate. Like, how dare they, Like, usually I'd be kind of like, okay, like, that's nice, that's pleasant, I like that. I mean, there is such a thing as like toxic positivity, where people are kind of just like, invalidating in a way, where it's like, maybe if I have an issue and I go and try to open up to my friend about this issue that I'm experiencing, I don't know, it could be anything, like, why do I get angry when I'm, sitting on the front porch and, a neighbor walks their dog, and there's a certain dog that likes to come and, sniff around just near my driveway, and I feel like it's kind of like an invasion of privacy. Like, I don't know, I'm just making stuff up, but I'm like, if that was a problem I'm dealing with, and then I tell a friend, I would want a friend ideally to listen and hear what I'm saying and be like, man, like, yeah, I could see how that would be like annoying, or I could see how that would be like a challenge to deal with, or like, what are you gonna do? Like, are you gonna do something about it? Versus someone being like, that's not a big deal, like, don't, like, my life has bigger problems than yours, or like, oh, you want to compare problems, you want to compare complaints and, concerns with privacy, listen to what I have to say about my life instead of yours, or like, or somebody just being like, oh, look at the bright side, like, cheer up, smile, put a smile on your face. Yeah, and I'm not saying that those things are bad to say, but it's kind of like, if it's always like that, people kind of sometimes don't feel heard. Like, I feel like a lot of people want to hear the things, want to hear someone kind of like siding with them, not always debating with them and like choosing the opposite side, or not always just like invalidating them and saying like that how they feel or think is wrong for whatever reason. Now, I would say for myself personally, I do kind of like it when, yeah, people validate and, seem to kind of understand where I'm coming from, but then also, like, if they could still go, like, another level with it sometimes, too. Like, if they do think I'm wrong, or if they do think, they would handle it in another way, or if they do feel like their mind would maybe address it differently, I would like to hear like what they have to say. Like, a lot of times when I'm talking to my friends, I really like to hear their opinions, even if their opinions are like totally different from mine. But there is kind of like a way to be kind of like, like sensitive about it, or like understanding about it, versus being completely invalidating. Those are two different things. I'm gonna put my phone on low battery. Alright, so that's one level. And then, yeah, I would say that I do value communication in that way. But yeah, I mean, I'm not too stuffy with things. Like, I mean, I'm not like, people can't have their own opinions around me or whatever. It's just kind of like the manner in which they express their opinions, like I mean, I feel like most of my close friends, we can talk about pretty much anything, and we don't see the world exactly the same all the time on a lot of stuff, on a lot of even important issues like voting and finances and, expenses and, drugs and, all kinds of things, like political, religious. Like, we're so different in so many different ways, but I think we all have respect for each other's personalities and enjoy each other's company and personalities. But yeah, like, when the paragraph on page 54 starts talking about not taking your own mind personally, that's something I never really thought about too much. And then where those ideas in your mind come from, and that your mind has the ability to hear information from other realms. I don't think I've heard anything like that before. Like, I would say, for myself personally, I notice how I can tune in or not tune in to a certain energy, right? So if there's like a certain energy where I'm like able to kind of tune into it or not, and that definitely affects my mind and affects if I'm taking things personally. Like, that's something I've kind of noticed. Like, an example of that for me would be like, if I see, if I'm watching a movie and there's something kind of triggering on there. Like, for example, last night I was up late watching movies because I couldn't sleep. Not that was going to help me sleep, but I realized I didn't have any plans. Well, I knew I didn't have any plans till later in the day. And so I figured, since I don't have plans till later, I'm just going to stay up anyways. So there was this show, I'm trying to find it on Netflix. There was a show on Netflix that I was going to watch called Transatlantic. Now, it seemed right up my alley. like historical drama, World War II time period. But not that long ago, I had been binge watching World War II content, particularly about the Holocaust and Nazi Germany and all these kind of things. And my goodness, like, I was so exhausted by it. I got so tired and overwhelmed by it and started feeling so negatively about it. I told myself, I was like, stop, stop with the World War II stuff. Stop with the Hitler content and the Stalin content, and stop popping over to the North Korean content. Like, just stay away from all this. Like, it's not helping you. And I was kind of deep in it for like a few day period, maybe like 3 days or something like that, where I had just binge watched a lot of content that was just super heavy and negative, with a lot of like, what's in that content. Like, none of it is really like positive, but I was kind of thinking about like, why do people think these ways, and like, conformity and control, and would I have listened, would I have hid, would I have ran, would I have fought, like, what would I have done? I don't know why I just wanted to sit in that for a few days, but I totally did. And that's also not very like me, because I don't tend to gravitate towards heavy content. But I have noticed, because I've been feeling a little bit better, I'm able to kind of tolerate content like that. Like, usually I wouldn't even want to watch a commercial that has something like that in it, or like an ad that has some kind of content like that in it. I would have been wishing that I never saw it. Like, I wouldn't be like deeply kind of like disturbed by it necessarily, but I would be like, okay, like, I don't want to see that again, or like, something like, versus like actually actively engaging with it and like watching multiple episodes and movies and documentaries back to back to back like that. Like, usually I would not do that, and if I would, it might have been like one show or one episode or one movie or something, not just like back to back content for multiple days on end. Like, that is not usually, the way that because I've had such high stress levels. Like, that's not usually how I would have done things. But I don't know. Like, I realize that that's not usually how I would have done things, but I did do it because I could, and it was a little bit disturbing, but not as disturbing as things normally would have been for me that are like that type of content. And so that's the type of thing that I kind of realized on my own, was kind of like how I tune into different content and how the energy of it kind of affects me or impacts me, because I'm not usually aware of it. And so yeah, like, because I'm not usually aware of it, of how it's impacting me, because I am usually pretty sensitive to it, is what I mean. And this last time I kind of was just like, whatever. I found it not entertaining, like in a fun way, but more like it was like feeding my mind. Like, I kind of liked the intellectual challenge of it all. Even though it was really dark, and I don't really, I don't agree with like racial hatred, genocide. I don't agree with Nazis and all that. I'm not into all that kind of stuff. But just the concepts themselves of like society and politics, and how people can just be driven to do horrific things. That's a lot of the content I was watching right then. And yeah, it affects my energy negatively. Like, it affects my sleep, it affects my thought processes, it makes me just feel like low energy. Like, I don't have, like, I'm not smiling, I'm not laughing, I'm not excited. And yeah, but for the voice in your mind to come from another reality or another realm, like, I I'm not saying something's right or wrong, but I'm trying to like think about it. Like, to me it seems like maybe an example of that could be like uh a a way of looking at life or a perception that was never had before. So, I mean, I don't know if this is controversial, but basically, I've noticed that psychedelics, so either psychedelics that are like most um like so if you say like psilocybin, like people know it as magic mushrooms, uh or cannabis edibles, like they've got these psychoactive properties. I've talked about multiple times that, I like these types of products. It's hard to really compare psilocybin to cannabis. Like, there are some similarities, but they're pretty different. Um, and because where I live, psilocybin as well, but cannabis is legal. Psilocybin isn't quite legal, but you can kind of get your hands on it, and you probably won't get in trouble. But it's like they sell it in a way online that you can buy it and order it to deliver to your house. So it's like, I don't know what to say to that. It's like, okay, maybe it's illegal, but it's also like, I don't think anybody's like tracking these sites or whatever, like, they're getting taxed, and they have to pay their taxes. The money's still going back to the government, so it's like whatever. um but oh man, guys, like, I just don't know. Like, I think so with the use of psilocybin and cannabis, and I'm talking about this on the fly. I haven't thought this through at all until now. I'm trying to think about it on the spot. um I've noticed that it's easy to tap into certain things, where my mind isn't naturally going by itself. But have I had ideas that are so far from my own understanding of the world in general that I'm like, this is from some other thing? Um, I would say my own personal experiences have been more like, I guess the thing that I can explain the best is how I'm feeling one day, or like for consecutive days or multiple parts of multiple days, how I'm feeling, and then how I end up actually like uh what the result is later. So for example, like, I talk a lot about my energy, how I feel like my energy is just crap sometimes. Like, lately I've just been struggling with that a lot. Like, my energy's crap. Like, I wake up, I might be anxious in the morning, I might feel crappy in the morning. I'll eat, sometimes I'll be like pretty motivated because of the caffeine, and then, you know, I'll kind of be getting stuff done and feel good that I got stuff done, but then still be looking at like all the stuff that I didn't get done and just wondering like why I'm no longer able to do things in the way that I used to. Because there was maybe like other times when I found it a little bit easier to like, there were other times when I found it like a little bit easier to um just be able to kind of do what was maybe like expected. um so I've kind of just been like um like maybe I was able to just kind of um experience, you know uh feeling oh, today sucks, today's not good, like I'm looking at the negative stuff, and then I'll take, usually if it's later in the day, it's probably going to be a cannabis product. So I only really take psilocybin these days, like on an empty stomach, like first thing in the morning. And so because I like it on an empty stomach, because otherwise I get like stomach irritability. So I usually don't take these things, like I usually don't take psilocybin in the evening. But say I take some psilocybin after a day of kind of feeling like some crummy moments, but maybe they got a little bit better and I just kind of moved on, like that's kind of how a lot of my days go. It's like I wouldn't say every single day I feel perfect. Like I will feel like physically negative sensations physically, like a little bit. I would call it like physical discomfort. I wouldn't really go as far as to call it like pain, physical pain. There can be like a little like emotional pain there, just kind of like mental pain, cognitive like discomfort, and then like physical discomfort. I would call it more of like a discomfort. It's not itching, it's not anything like, it's just kind of like tension, if that makes sense. Like kind of like if somebody gives you caffeine, but then like you have to just like sit there and like you can't talk and you can't move and you can't do anything, but your mind is racing and you got like a lot going on, like you want to go for a run or something, and you're just like sitting it quietly in an office or something. Like but it's like I don't have to have caffeine in my system to have that type of, it's not that intense, but it's like ongoing and mild, just kind of like tension. And so I might feel that way. And then, after taking some cannabis, like usually it would be an edible, I can kind of talk myself through things a little bit better and just be like, okay, pause, like what's going on, like take a break, like you notice that, like I've been having this sensation lately that's kind of weird, like my throat gets tight, and I think so the first time I ever remember that happening was in a practicum where my supervisor was a jerk, and I made a mistake on something I didn't know. So we used to have to write these assessments for incoming clients, or after they'd been there like a year, we would have to update that same paperwork. It was a little bit different. There were a little bit of differences because they weren't like newly enrolling at that year mark. But I believe if there was another assessment in the system from either a crisis house, a hospital, a PERT call, some other site that just used the same system as us but was doing that same type of assessment for their site, but it wasn't a duplicative service, you would have until that one expired to finish yours. And well, the reason why is because whenever you would open an assessment, you would have to open a client plan, and so your client plan would expire in, I don't know how many days. I want to say it's like 30 days. You'd have 30 days to finish it. But if there was a client plan open because of another assessment that was before your assessment, like if their client plan was expiring before your 30 days, you would have to finish your assessment earlier. I didn't know that. I thought we always had 30 days. And so mine was late. So if that makes sense, it's like, it's almost like, okay, if I open something expecting, today's June 16th. If I open something June 16th expecting that July 15th I would have to have that assessment finished and closed out and signed off on, assuming that I had to have it done, that would have been about 30 days. No, I guess the 16th of July, because June has 30 days. I was thinking July has 31 days, but yeah, June has 30 days. So it would be exactly the 15th. It would have been due, or 16th. Sorry, what am I saying? Today's the 16th, so it would be due in 30 days, which would be the 16th. And so, but then if it was actually due on the 14th or something, and I didn't know and let it go to 30 days. Now, nobody caught that. Nobody told me. Nobody explained it to me. But, I think when the supervisor that was a jerk, went to sign off on it, it said, maybe there was like some message that came up or something, or like, the due date or whatever. Like there was something that she kind of finally noticed, like, oh, this is this way and it's therefore late because there's this other thing that was open that you didn't really know, and so she basically took me to the director to like talk to the director about it. I don't know if I thought they were gonna fire me, but I was like, okay, to get like taken into the office. But they explained it to me and I was like, okay, but I didn't know. But then when we were talking, like I noticed my voice was like super tight and I was like almost whispering because I almost like couldn't talk, and I was just like, dang, like that's never really happened before. But it strangely happened a couple times this week, and maybe I can remember maybe 2 times that it happened between now and that first time, which was like, dude, that must have been like 9 years ago or something. It was a long time ago. So it's happened maybe in 3 periods of time within 9 years or so. But I kind of noticed my throat was getting tight this week. And, I had to kind of take breaks and do some breathing and relaxation, because it's like my throat shouldn't be getting tight. Like I'm not talking to anybody, I'm not like, yeah, I'm podcasting right now, but it's like I was just like in my room done for the day with what I was gonna do, and I was like, man, my throat is tight. And I kept thinking I had a sore throat, like like when you're getting sick, and I was like, no, this isn't a sore throat. Like I didn't have this all day, and like it comes and goes, but it's because my throat is like tight. And it's like, man, but I noticed like I can kind of relax it so that isn't happening anymore. And so I'm like, I don't know, like I've been doing a lot of different weird things, and so I'm like, maybe it's because of something the doctor gave me, but it's like I don't think that would be it. Maybe because I mean, like, I don't know why I would be like that overwhelmed, but maybe all the job interview stuff is kind of overwhelming. And some big trip expenses coming up that are pretty overwhelming to even think about. So I don't know, like I'm kind of curious. I'm a little bit curious to know how things are going to unfold for me with certain stuff. But yeah, with the energy, I would say that is something that I've noticed. It's like I'll have some kind of like tension or some kind of like just kind of like negative thoughts throughout the day, and then be able to kind of like do type of practices that help. Like for me, definitely listening to drumming or chanting, or deep breathing, or even sometimes ASMR, or just kind of taking almost a nap, like just kind of laying down, closing my eyes, And for me, when I focus on my breathing, it really does help me take what's on my mind kind of like off my mind, because I'm putting a lot of my attention into the breathing. And so, sorry, there's like these old cars that all decided to race each other right now. Jeez. So basically, yeah, like there's definitely been kind of a bit going on, but yeah, I don't really know. Like, so that's, I don't really know if I have much more to say about this part of the topic. Like, it's a lot. But yeah, when I was talking about like, what helps, like the breathing, the ASMR, like there's certain areas in my body that I notice that I hold. I wouldn't call it even necessarily tension, but it is a form of tension, but I've noticed that when I get the most, not the most, but like when I get kind of that feeling of like that tightness in my throat, or that kind of anxiety in the morning, or just feeling kind of like, oh, like that, how that feeling, the feeling I hate the most is when I have too much caffeine or too much like vitamin B12 or something, and it just makes me just like so anxious, and I'm like, why did I do this? Like every time I'm like, why did I drink that whole freaking Starbucks coffee? Like, I know people can, and I have before too, but the come down from that for me is so intense. I'm like, damn, this is not pleasant. Like, I do not like it at all. It feels so bad, and like I just hate it so much. But I do it to myself. It's like willingly. I think actually, was it last night or the night before? I think yesterday I took too much B vitamins. I could tell because I was super anxious last night. Um I think it's the B vitamins. I'm pretty sure. I had this, instead of having a second cup of coffee or a tea at my lunch time yesterday, I decided to have one of those VitaShroom, Lion's Mane, non psychedelic, coffee. It's a mushroom coffee, but it didn't have any caffeine. It was like a mushroom drink. It has chaga and lion's mane and a whole bunch of different types of B vitamins. And I had one of those packs. My last one of those packs. I had one of those packs, and so I think when I have that with coffee, it just throws me. And so I had coffee in the morning yesterday, and then I had that afterwards, and so I think that definitely contributed to me staying awake, staying up. But I wasn't like, I don't think that stuff gets me wired, but I do think B12 gets me anxious in a way that makes it uncomfortable for me to like easily sleep. Like, I can sleep if I like force myself to do it, but it's like I am so bad at forcing myself to sleep that I usually just won't, unless I'm feeling tired and like my eyes are starting to close by themselves. Usually I'll probably just keep pushing, which is terrible, but it's like it's what I like. I don't know, like I get a little bit of discomfort when I'm trying to fall asleep sometimes, so it's just kind of not that pleasant. But it's not always like that. It's just sometimes. So it's like, but yeah, mornings and nights can be hard for me. But it's like, it's because I don't sleep enough. So, and I don't fall asleep right away when I'm tired. So it's like, it's like, dude, you're exhausted. Go to bed. But yeah, like I've started kind of talking myself through things more like that more often. Just like, if I do notice that there's something I need to do, and just being like, hey, like you said you're going to do this, and I'm not probably perfect with it, but I'm like acknowledging the stuff that I'm avoiding, if that makes sense. So, whether or not I'm following through more often or less often, it's hard to tell because it hasn't been that many days. I don't have that much data to work with, but yeah, like that's kind of what I've been trying, things that have been working for me, but with this concept, I don't really know, other than that, kind of what I've done as far as like my mind, and my own self-talk, and kind of how my mind deals with things. I kind of just let it deal with things. I kind of just let my mind run loose, I don't really pull a leash in or anything, and like I'm starting to do that a little bit, like calmly, patiently, just trying to like be like, all right, take a step back, like take a seat, let's reflect a little more often in my days. Strangely, that is hard to do. Like I do come from a religious background, and I was raised around a lot of different types of religious people, and one thing that I was always raised with this, with ideas that, prayer is important. Pray, you should pray. And then, I met a Muslim friend, and I had other Jewish friends, and then started meeting more Muslim friends, and there was something I kind of liked at a certain part of my life, which was the praying morning, noon, and night, or the just praying more often. The religion I grew up in, it was more like praying, but not to like you're not necessarily praying, well, I guess, I don't know, there's no times where you have to pray or where you can't pray, but it's like, I don't know, I guess people would expect pray at meals, pray in the morning, in the evening, kind of thing. Pray if you go to a worship service, but I don't know, I just like the idea of like a time of day to kind of like do praying. I wouldn't say that I have done that particularly, but I did, like I mentioned, kind of get into like, when the sun's setting, not really saying a prayer necessarily, but I mean, I don't really know how to really distinguish between like prayer, meditation, reflection. Like to me, I don't know if I really differentiate, like whether or not, I believe or don't believe in a higher power, or am praying to one or not, or praying to myself or whatever. Like whatever version of things people do or don't do, it's like I don't really know what the difference is. Like I think it's the mind is taking its intention into something, and just kind of like revealing what it understands about whatever, and maybe what it doesn't understand yet, and what's stressful, what's good, or just kind of trying to notice what's going on and not even really like talking about it in some kind of way. Because I think prayer is more of like a communication. I think usually when people are praying, they're usually like assuming that they're like, praying to someone or something. I don't think people usually would assume that prayer is like, I think you would at least be hanging out with whatever you believe in, like the entity or whatever it is. You would at least be like in the presence of, even if you're not having some kind of communication, just kind of like being there. But I don't know, like it is a form of meditation in a way, and I think they can all be forms of reflection. But I don't know, like, I don't think I'm gonna like fully gravitate back towards, I don't know. I can't really say if I'm ever gonna do certain things again or not, but I don't see it in the near future. Trying to kind of practice prayer routines like that necessarily. But I don't know. I wonder, people that I meet, people that I know, and maybe it's a cultural thing. Most people I know have difficulty with prayer, difficulty with meditation, difficulty with breath work. When I was listening to those Don Depani video clips, I did recognize that, what he said, I mean, he kind of keeps saying the same thing in the available clips, but it's like, we're not taught to focus or train our minds. We've never been, like, taught how to do that. So when somebody tells you how to do it, like, nobody's told you, like, sit here, do it this way, usually nobody, like, says that, Some cultures, yes, but I mean, I would say my generation and the culture I grew up in and the subculture I grew up in, like, it wasn't really something people would, like, teach. Like, they might have, like, seminars where people practice, and I remember learning about the Acts prayer. I can't remember what it was. I think it was, like, when you pray to God, you do, like, each thing stands for a word. Each letter stands for a word. It's an acronym, so it's, like, the A is, I don't even remember. I think it's affirmation. So you're kind of like giving God affirmations. And then C is confession. And T is thankfulness or thanking. And S is, I don't know. Is it supplication or is it, I don't remember. I don't know what the S was for, but surrender, I don't know, I don't know, but basically it stood for something, and then you could use that kind of template to, like, organize praying. I gotta look this up. I don't know why. Let me see if I can find this. Alright, come on phone, let's go. What does the Acts prayer stand for? Oh my gosh. Of course my internet doesn't want to work. Acts prayer acronym. Oh my gosh. Prayer acronym stand for. What does it stand for? Oh, I was maybe right. I got some of the words wrong, but so adoration. What did I say? Affirmation. So adoration. So, like, telling God, like, how much you adore and appreciate. Confession, thanksgiving, and supplication. So, or they say supplication or supply needs. And I think that's for people who like praying, or who do pray to God, or to whoever they pray to. That's an interesting way of laying it out, because, like, when I did have any kind of praying that I was doing when I was alone, usually too, I usually didn't really know like, I usually was, like, told to pray. Like, I was, I grew up with it. Now I lay me down to sleep, and learning the 23rd Psalm and learning the Lord's Prayer. We didn't really say them all that much like that, but, like, It was something to memorize. And then, like, there was a lot of Bible memorization. And, yeah, I always remember, like, having trouble with praying, though. I was, like, sometimes I would be on point about it and I liked it. There was this book I grew up with called Steps to Christ by Ellen G. White. Adventist, grew up Adventist. So basically, yeah, like it kind of lays out a lot about prayer as well. It's from like the 1800s, and so the English is very different, but it's got like a poetic old written kind of text to it. I kind of like it sometimes, but it feels like very like the books are yelling at you. That's kind of how that's like whenever I read it I was like, "Oh no." Like it always, like, I don't know, that book to me felt kind of softer, but the other books, there's a lot of them that, like, the tone that I read it with is just like, you are screwing up. But I don't know. I never really knew what I fully believed in that kind of stuff. But I mean, it was interesting food for thought nonetheless. And yeah, that was a little book that you can get them online for free. Like, there's PDFs, and it was basically about that, about prayer. And I was very interested that, of all the types of services we went to, there wasn't really a lot about prayer. It was always this like thing to me that I never really was like. I was like, sometimes I would feel like this intimate connection, and then other times it would just be like talking to a wall. Like, I would say, like, most of the times I would just be like, my mind would wander and I'd find myself just like somewhere completely else, thinking about like, oh, like what I had for dinner, just like daydreaming or whatever. Like, it would always take my, like, I would always, lose focus with praying. Like, that was, and I basically got to a point where, I used to feel guilty about it. And then I got to a point where I was like, it's just how it is, like, and so I would pray and then just be like, all right, that was my prayer for the night. And just like, even if I was like 2 minutes in and I was like, saying the beginning part, and then I just kind of wandered off in a daydream, and then I'm like, oh, well, that'll count as my prayer, like, I wasn't like forcing myself. I was like, that's just how tonight is. It's just not going to work. And, I always just, prayer was always just interesting because, like, if you grow up in a religion, most religions, I think, teach you how to pray. Like, there's kind of like a method that's like more involved. And it's interesting in Christianity that the only prayer that's really taught in the New Testament, is it the only one? I guess it's kind of the only one that, it has what's called the Lord's Prayer. And it's like, that is not that long of a prayer. And there's a lot in the Bible about prayer. I don't want to go off and on and on and on. Like, I'll record that elsewhere. I'm going to talk about prayer because I'm in the mood to talk about it. But, yeah, I just, I don't know. Like, all that type of stuff with, like, meditation, it's kind of the same for me. Like, I have the same issue. My mind kind of wanders. I do notice, though, with the physical things, like body scans and all that kind of stuff, like, I am very, I can get, like, I'll still daydream, but I'm like, that, for me, actually is a lot more intense. Like, once I start focusing on physical sensations, it's like, whoa. Like, that's something that's kind of newer for me. I feel like I've been, like, disconnected from my body for, like, I don't know how many years. Like, I can tune into it, but not really. And I think that's why, like, at the beginning I was mentioning about, like, that kind of tension I experience. I think that's why, because I'm not, like, relaxed all the time, or, like, switching my mind into my body to kind of relax more. Like, I'm kind of just, like, stressing out and staying there. And then it's kind of ramping up throughout the day just because I'm busy and fatiguing, and just naturally, that's just what I think happens. And the most vulnerable parts of the day are usually like when you're sleeping and when you're waking up, because you're not like fully aware of what's even going on. And so yeah, like I think that does have a lot to do with like why it's so hard for me to fall asleep, or why when I wake up I'm just like a little bit like like almost every time before I wake up I'm like predicting that like, okay, if I wake up and I just don't feel too well, that's just how it's gonna be. I'll usually reassess after breakfast, after some coffee or after breakfast. Usually I'll start feeling at least somewhat better, but usually that helps a lot. So but yeah, when I first wake up in the morning, it's like I am usually like, I don't know, if I have slept well and everything, then like yeah, like, and I've been exercising and stuff, then like yeah, I'll probably feel pretty fine in the morning. But like if I've been letting things go a couple days and eating junk food and sleeping late and waking up early and like, just pushing too much, then I'll definitely feel it. I'll be like, whoa, I feel pretty not so refreshed. But that can kind of perks up a little bit after breakfast. But the issue is that I wake up so early before breakfast. Usually I'm like I'm up a couple hours before breakfast. And so it's like, to have to like deal with that for a couple hours every morning is like, oh my goodness. And I'm still so stubborn. I haven't started trying to eat at like 5:30 or 6 in the morning. But maybe I should. Maybe I should just have like a snack early, because it's like I'm up anyways, and like it might just make my morning just a little more pleasant. But I'll think about that. Maybe I'll just keep snacks by my bed. I don't know what snacks, but some kind of snacks, and then just eat them in the morning first thing with my little coffee that I have usually before breakfast. I don't usually have coffee with breakfast. I like to have coffee at least an hour before breakfast, but I don't know. It depends. Alright guys, so this is a longer episode because I've been kind of slacking on my episodes. I don't think this is the best of quality. I apologize. I'm kind of all over the place. But I was like, I want to record a longer one because I haven't in a while. But there's an hour, a little over an hour for you. So I hope there was some food for thought in there and that it wasn't completely just too much nonsense. But I don't know. I'm kind of thrown. I got a lot to think about this weekend. I might put the book down for a night or a day or so. Just so I can kind of think on this more. It might be nice to take this into the weekend a little bit more versus like bringing up another topic all of a sudden. But we'll see. If I feel like reading, I'll read too. But alrighty guys, thanks for listening.